Gates. He's the answer to all the world's problems, and anyone who criticises him is a conspiracy theorist or a considered academic concerned about him colonising and monopolising the world's resources. You're going to love this. Whenever people talk about Bill Gates, it's usually as a kind of sort of megalomaniacal tyrant or as the saviour of the world. When he is harshly criticised, people often think it's a kind of conspiracy-oriented argument derived from his actions during the pandemic or the considerable power of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Recently, 50 agricultural organisations got together to write Bill Gates a letter condemning his approach and suggestions to the problem of food sovereignty. It's a beautiful letter, it's brilliantly articulate, and the reason we want to present it to you today is because it demonstrates that criticising Bill Gates doesn't make you a conspiracy theorist, and it demonstrates too that Bill Gates' actions and influence are nefarious and harmful. Stay to the end of this video because we are equipping you with arguments so that you can have a conversation with people. They go, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a conspiracy theorist. This is not conspiracy theory. This is harmful policies that are designed to centralise power and control food. And people are answering back from a position of authority, integrity and expertise. But before we get into that, let's see Bill Gates presenting solutions in a way that definitely doesn't make you query his motives. After all, he's got a little trolley full of corn. A trolley full of corn.
All right, just watch over that there, Mark.
When you see something like that, do you straight away think, this is going to be propaganda? Otherwise, why has Bill Gates got a trolley full of corn?
Well, I brought some corn with me. Some people call it maize, like the maize that's grown in East Africa, where, of course, almost all the farmers have very small plots of land.
Those bloody idiots.
They work with less than a hectare, which is about 2 acres.
Stupid.
So just about 12,000 times as much as what's sitting right there.
Because this letter by the Community Alliance for Justice, stroke AgriWatch, is much more articulate and authoritative than I could ever be, let's get right into it, because it addresses the patronising nature of this video and also the fact that Bill Gates is just plain wrong. And it alludes to the idea that there may be more nefarious objectives afoot because almost everything that Bill Gates suggests empowers Bill Gates and interests comparable to Bill Gates while disempowering ordinary people. It's brilliant. Dear Bill Gates, I like they've called him his full name. You were recently featured commenting on the global state of agriculture and food insecurity. It is your preferred high-tech solutions, including genetic engineering, new breeding technologies, and now digital agriculture, that have in fact consistently failed to reduce hunger or increased food access as promised. So straight away, Bill Gates' suggested solutions do not work and have made the problem worse. In 2 recent articles, you make a number of claims that are inaccurate and need to be challenged. Both pieces admit that the world currently produces enough food to adequately feed all the Earth's inhabitants, yet you continue to fundamentally misdiagnose the problem as relating to low productivity. We do not need to increase production as much as to assure more equitable access to food. In addition, there are 4 specific distortions in these pieces which should be addressed. Namely, 1, the supposed need for credit for fertiliser, cheap fertiliser, to ensure agricultural productivity. 2, the idea that the green revolution of the mid-20th century needs to be replicated now to address hunger. 3, the idea that better seeds, often produced by large corporations, are required to cope with climate change. And 4, your suggestion that if people have solutions that aren't singing Kumbaya, you'll put money behind them. What I like about this first paragraph is the initial statement that food poverty could be solved immediately, that the world produces enough food for nobody to be hungry. Now, as countries like the UK and the United States enter into a cost of living crisis and likely conditions of poverty not seen for nearly a century, it's important to address that the problem is not a lack of resources. The problem is therefore a political one. That means it relates to systems of the imagination and mind brought into being for the convenience and benefit of hierarchical elites rather than a necessary problem that relates to resources. And I also like the promise that we're going to break down the 4 assumptions that Bill Gates has made and one by one take them down. First, synthetic fertilizers contribute 2% of overall greenhouse gas emissions and are the primary source of nitrous oxide emissions. Producing nitrogen fertilizers requires 3 to 5% of the world's fossil gas. They also make farmers and importing nations dependent on volatile prices on international markets and are a major cause of rising food prices globally. Yet you claim that even more fertilizer is needed to increase agricultural productivity and address hunger. Toxic and damaging synthetic fertilizers are not a feasible way forward. Already, companies, organizations and farmers in Africa and elsewhere have been developing biofertilizers made from compost, manure and ash and biopesticides made from botanical compounds such as neem tree oil or garlic. These products can be manufactured locally, thereby avoiding dependency and price volatility, and can be increasingly scaled up and commercialized. The agricultural protests that we're seeing across the world are a result of edicts that they reduce emissions. Meanwhile, Bill Gates is suggesting measures that would increase emissions yet further, claiming that they're ecologically motivated and that they're going to solve problems. So it doesn't make sense, does it? Measures are introduced that persecute ordinary farmers, while simultaneously people that have enormous influence in the agricultural field are suggesting measures that will lead to an increase in emissions while flying around the world on a private jet to COP27 and other meaningless gesture conferences in order to espouse how normal people have got to change their behaviour. Second, the Green Revolution was far from a resounding success. It did very little to reduce the number of hungry people in the world or to ensure equitable and sufficient access to food. It also came with a host of other problems, from ecological issues like long-term soil degradation and socio-economic ones like increased inequality and indebtedness, which has been a major contribution to the epidemic of farmer suicides in India. So of course this indebtedness could perhaps be seen as part of the solution. I've been told before, look at what the results of some of these measures are and then forget what they told you they were doing it for. Just look at the results. And if the results are, indebtedness or the ability to lock people down, then you can start to think, that's why they did it then. Judge them by their fruits. It's literally biblical. Your unquestioning support for a new green revolution demonstrates willful ignorance about history and about the root causes of hunger, which are by and large about political and economic arrangements, not about a global lack of food. So you're not even told the true nature of the problem, let alone the inefficiencies of the solution. Third, climate resilient seeds are already in existence and being developed by farmers and traded through informal seed markets. You know that most investments have been in maize and rice rather than locally adapted and nutritious cereals like sorghum. Yet AGRA, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, which your foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, created and financed, has been among those institutions that have disproportionately focused on maize and rice. In other words, you are part of creating the very problem you name. The AGRA initiative, which your foundation continues to fund, has also pushed restrictive seed legislation that limits and restricts crop innovation to well-resourced labs and companies, centralizing power, preventing informal seed markets, disempowering ordinary farmers. These initiatives don't increase widespread innovation, but rather contribute to the privatization and consolidation of corporate monopolies over seed development and seed markets, almost as if that was the intention. Finally, your assertion that critics of your approach are simply singing Kumbaya rather than developing meaningful and fundable solutions is extremely disrespectful and dismissive. Well, of course it is. There are already many tangible ongoing proposals and projects that work to boost productivity and food security, from biofertilizer and biopesticide manufacturing facilities to agroecological farmer training programs to experimentation with new water and soil management techniques, low input farming systems and pest-deterring plant species. So there are already measures in place that can be controlled and implemented by the communities themselves and don't require the centralization of power, the patenting of seeds and crops, the technologicalization of the process of agriculture, all, by the way, by a fellow who seems to be buying up farmland at the moment, by coincidence. What you're doing here is gaslighting, presenting practical, ongoing farmer-led solutions as somehow fanciful or ridiculous, while presenting your own preferred approaches as pragmatic. This is an approach that we see all over the world. Solutions that benefit ordinary people and allow ordinary people to continue to control our lives, control our food. These things are seen as somehow vulgar or kumbaya, like all spiritual, stupid, ill-considered. Do you think there's an agenda at play? Let me know in the comments. comments, let me know in the chat if these solutions are pragmatic or pragmatic only in so much as they empower Bill Gates. Yet, it is your preferred high-tech solutions, including genetic engineering, new breeding technologies, and now digital agriculture that have in fact consistently failed to reduce hunger or increase food access as promised. And in some cases, the solutions you expound as fixes for climate change actually contribute to the biophysical processes driving the problem, e.g. more fossil fuel-based fertilizers and more fossil fuel-dependent infrastructure to support them. So even the stuff they talk about, the stuff that they do in those conferences, all of their sort of hand-wringing about we've got to save the planet, we've got to save the climate, they are simultaneously presenting ideas that make the problem worse. So do they really care? Or exacerbate the political conditions that lead to inequality in food access, e.g. policies and seed breeding initiatives that benefit large corporations and labs rather than farmers themselves. That's not a coincidence that we're seeing this worldwide agricultural movement that is presented as being against climate change measures. Meanwhile, digital agriculture and centralisation of resources and ideologies is being presented as the solution. In both articles, you radically simplify complex issues in ways that justify your own approach and interventions. You note in the New York Times op-ed that Africa with the lowest costs of labour and land should be a net exporter of agricultural products because their productivity is much lower than in rich countries and you just don't have the infrastructure. However, costs of land and labour as well as infrastructures are socially and politically produced. Africa is in fact highly productive, it's just that the profits are realised elsewhere. Through colonisation, neoliberalism, debt traps and other forms of legalised pillaging, African lives, environments and bodies have been devalued and made into commodities for the benefit and profit of others. Infrastructures have been designed to channel these commodities outside of the continent itself. Africa is not self-sufficient in cereals because its agricultural, mining and other resource-intensive sectors have been structured in ways that are geared towards serving colonial and then international markets rather than African peoples themselves. Although you are certainly not responsible for all of this, you and your foundation are exacerbating some of these problems through a very privatised, profit-based and corporate approach to agriculture. So Bill Gates is presenting himself as the solution when in fact he is the problem. And many of these arguments about the exploitation of Africa and racial differences and colonialism and imperialism actually centralise on the figures that are trying to sort of make a kind of social profit from saying they're helping. We've got to have a fairer world, let's put badges on things, let's support stuff, let's do the right hashtags. These are the guys that are causing the problems. There is no shortage of practical solutions and innovations by African farmers and organisations. We invite you to step back and learn from those on the ground. That's a polite way of saying fuck off, Bill. At the same time, we invite high-profile news outlets, mainstream media, to be more cautious about lending credibility to one wealthy white man's flawed assumptions, hubris and ignorance at the expense of people and communities who are living and adapting to these realities as we speak. I wonder why the mainstream media are so eager to present Bill Gates as a solution, almost as if they are somehow financially indebted to him and have commercial relationships with Bill Gates and affiliate organisations that prevent them from telling you the truth and making you realise that, wow, all the people of the world have the same problem.
As Ndidi said, the Green Revolution was a miracle.
There's a counter-argument for that.
Amazingly, despite low land costs, low labor costs, sub-Saharan Africa still imports billions of dollars of crops every year from all over the world.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for that. And it's not because they're all idiots. There are complex historical and corporate and commercial reasons for it.
And that's the reason why the war in Ukraine is now causing a hunger crisis.
Yes, there's definitely no subplots there or skullduggery to look at. Look at how the whole thing is simplified. There's just one problem. Well, there's Putin and there's these idiot farmers, and I've got the solution to all of it. Let me be in charge of everything. Don't think.
And the answer is innovation.
Oh, could anyone help us with this innovation, Bill? Is there anyone around here with innovation? Oh, me, Mummy, please pick me. Please pick me. Let me be in charge of everything.
And we have some good examples from the past where we did drive innovation.
We certainly do, Bill. You can speak to the grieving widows of the farmers of India.
The Gates Foundation funded a group of researchers in Africa to breed drought-tolerant varieties of maize.
Which the letter tells you is one of the crops they don't need so much of.
In Kenya, that's enough to feed their family for the whole year and to have excess maize to sell for about $880.
Bill Gates was boasting that they have magic seeds, crops engineered to adapt to climate change and resist agricultural pests, which ironically is what the people of Kenya call Bill Gates.
Because this is the trend, the one thing that will push against that population and climate change.
No, Bill. I think they're saying that many of the fertilizers you're suggesting flying around the world on a private jet. Hey, use some more fertilizers, but aren't those fertilizers costly to buy? Bye!
We can develop the tools and the systems to make sure that people have enough to eat, even despite the negative effects of climate change. Thank you.
So there you have it. Bill Gates likes to look at the world as simple data. What I offer you is this question. Is Bill Gates trying to help, or is Bill Gates simply suggesting that the solution to all of these problems is to give Bill Gates more power? But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think in the chat.